It is a huge honor for me today to be interviewing Penny Reed, who have been reading your stuff for literally 2 decades. It's an honor to have you on here. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. I'm excited to be with you today.
And rumor has it that you have a new book.
I do have a new book. And funny you should ask because, of course, I have one right here.
Let me read it. Growing Your Dental Business by Penny Reed. How long have you been growing dental businesses?
About 2 decades, since 1994.
So you started when you were 12.
I did. I was 12. I actually went to work for my dentist in 1992. He hired me to come in. I had been in management with Walmart, and he hired me to come in and run his practice. And I thought, wow, no nights, no weekends, no stress. Which
Okay,
that part was.
okay, Penny. The hardest thing about doing these interviews is we just passed 125,000 downloads on iTunes. And then you got to throw in Dental Town and YouTube and all that stuff. So the problem is we're averaging about 7,000 listeners, and they're anywhere from a junior and senior in dental school to older than me. 65, 70, whatever. So what I would so it's so hard talking to an audience when they're all at different levels, and so I try to mix it up over the hour, but just generally succinct. When you see successful dental offices and you see unsuccessful dental offices, what is the low hanging fruit of the difference? I mean, is it because they're in the wrong city? Is it they're in the wrong town, taking insurance, not insurance? What would you say are the low-hanging fruit obvious differences between those who are crushing it, having fun, killing it, making money, and those that, all the way to the other end where they go check out?
Yeah. That's a great question, and it's one, believe me, that I've had to ask myself from time to time because I'll see someone that's doing well, and then there's another doctor that's struggling, and of course my role is how do I help them make that shift? It starts in a place that's different than most dentists believe, and it really begins with their attitude. And one of the most common factors, and I shared this with the team in Tupelo, Mississippi yesterday, but I was acknowledging
I
their
lectured
doctor.
there. Was it
Yeah,
at the
yes,
casino? Was it at the casino?
I was actually in their office.
Okay. I've lectured at a casino in that city.
Yeah, me too, me too. But he was talking about a couple of years ago, he made a shift and really began to express appreciation to those around him and, his patients, his team. And we may not be able to control, for example, the economy. Maybe we've got a lot of financial pressure on us, which the dentists that have been in this for a while have seen some unpleasant changes in their reimbursement, to put it lightly. But in spite of that, they're still able to encourage their team, let their patients know how much they appreciate them. So at their core, I'm going to call it gratitude. They have a sense of gratitude for what they have, no matter what. So the team isn't coming in and thinking, wow, we had a really bad day yesterday. What are we coming into today? They come in, they're fresh, they're focused, they're ready to get going. So that points to the second part, which would be the people that you surround yourself with. I've had dentists ask me before, okay, if I was going to think about hiring you or another consultant, how important is it that I have the right people on board? I'm like, man, that's everything. I can share with you the best practices of what to do, but if you don't have folks on your team that are capable of doing it and most importantly, willing to do it, you're going to struggle. You're going to be beating your head against the wall. So I think those two, often we overlook it. We want to jump straight to the how-tos, the systems, which I love those. But we've got to have, the right leadership in place, the right members on the team, and them be in a place where they're willing to make those changes. That resistance to change is there, no matter what industry you're in. So get them motivated to do that. From the standpoint of the low-hanging fruit of the systems, I think we get busy. We kind of get on autopilot. You and I have been doing what we do for quite a while, right? So we just kind of shift, and autopilot is like driving a car, driving a stick shift. You don't even think about it anymore. So sometimes we roll into the office, we look at the schedule, okay, let's get going. That's where the opportunity starts, in my opinion, is the huddle. Knowing what to look for, not just reading off the patients on the schedule, but looking at and getting focused on, who's coming in today? Do they have family members that don't have scheduled appointments. Instead of just kind of looking, okay, well, we've got this at 10, we've got this at 11, we can put an emergency in here, but what opportunities are available to us? So I think the amount of focus that happens in the office is critical.
It's funny because we've both been trying to help dentists I've been doing it since, my whole life. And if you talk about attitude, they're just like, that's all fluff and bullshit. I want to know what to do. And it's like, so whenever you talk about attitude, it's all fluff and it's all everything. I mean, Southwest Airlines, we hire on attitude, we train for skill. And the faults of this are the deans of the dental school because they only accept people that have 4.0. So if you go to college and you have a girlfriend, you join a frat, and you go out a couple nights a week, and you make A's, B's, and C's, you don't have a prayer in hell of getting into med school, dent school, law school. But if you're a total nut freak like me, who went to the library after school and stayed there till it closed at midnight 7 days a week and got in a year early, you're not well-rounded. You're crazy. So the natural selection is all these algebra, chemistry, physics geek majors, and then they get out and they're in the people business. Even vets make the wrong mistake. They go, well, I'm going to be a vet because I don't want to deal with people. Well, who the
Right.
hell brings in a cat? I've never
Right.
seen
I
a
haven't
cat.
seen it
Yeah, I haven't seen
driving
a
a
cat
car.
driving a car. And it's all the people business. And it's so funny because the ones crushing it are people persons that just go in there and shake their hand. How you doing, Penny? Great to see you. It's been a while. And what's funny to me, I've had the luxury of tailing all the successful dentists. I mean, in continents around the world, and they all only have one thing in common: not quality of their dentistry, not whether or not they have a CAD cam or a laser or a CBT. They always walk up into the operatory and light up the room. Penny, how are you doing? And they shake their hand. How's your mother? I haven't seen her for like 2 years. What's going on with you? And it's like 3 minutes, and the person just completely lit up,
Sure.
and then they switch to and then the geek dentist will look at the x-ray box on the side and look at himself because he's looking for a physics problem, and the
Sure.
great ones will have it up in front of the patient and go over, well, let's look at your x-rays. Okay, here's on the upper right, and it's
Right.
looking good, and they always give compliments. The bad ones are always making people feel bad, like, oh, who did that root canal? What was that? Stevie Wonder's first root canal? That's horrible. So then you're saying you made a decision earlier to go to the dentist and you gave them money, and I'm telling you that you were stupid because it's a shitty root canal and it needs to be redone, and you don't,
Right.
yeah. So it's all people, and then that reflects onto the whole staff. So the people you surround yourself, I want you to address this problem. When I go into a dental office or I know dentists or whatever, it always seems like the worst employee is the one they think they can't live without.
Right.
She's been there 20 years. I'm like, dude, okay, she's nuts. And all your other employees only last 1 year or two, and they all leave because of her. And you think you can't live without that person. So I want you to do this. You have seen probably 1,000 offices. This dentist listening on his way to work, he only sees his office. What are red flags that you really got the wrong player on the team?
I would say a lot of the time how they respond when you ask them to do something, especially if it's something different than the way they've always done it. In other words, I've talked to a couple of my buddies. They went to this workshop. This is really working well in their office. I want us to do this way. Are they even open to it? Do they shut down? Do they also shut down other members of the team? Do you have a team member that I would say they're unapproachable? Or, and this has even happened to me, even though I'm not a dentist, do you have a team member that you're thinking, yeah, I'd really like to do that, but maybe I'll do it myself because I don't want to ask her to do it. It's just that whole fear and dread. Someone who uses their emotional muscle, I'm going to say to bully. We think that there's just bullies on the playground, but there are grown-up bullies in the workplace, and they're also in the dental office. So if it's someone in that practice that has more power than you, Howard, the owner, that's when you've really got to be afraid. And that person that you think you can't live without, I've seen it happen because they took another position. I've seen it happen maybe because they were actually caught embezzling. I've seen it happen because they were in some sort of accident and maybe passed away. That person that you can't live without, it's like a basketball team. and you've got one good player. Well, you know what? So we get the ball to that player, and that player shoots, and it goes in all the time. What happens if that player isn't there anymore? So sometimes the dangerous person can be the superstar. The one that thinks, oh, well, Susie isn't here. We're not going to hit goal any next week because Susie won't be here. So your team is only as strong as your weakest player. And that's one of the things that, when we look at growing a dental business, and there are things in dentistry that we can't change, and that's one of the reasons why I put the book together, right? First thing a doctor will say to me, other than second thing, would be first is fix my staff, right? Because they think they're the ones that are broken. The second one is how do we get reimbursed more? Tell me, what codes to use, and I'll say, well, number one, I'm not the code guru, and second, reimbursement's flat. It's creeping along. There's not a lot more money coming in for procedures, so we can't control that. But what we can control is how we respond to it and things that we do in our office. And I'm a big advocate for, you've got this team on board, and you as the doctor, you're improving your skills. You're wanting to learn how to do a better root canal, a quicker root canal, how to take out wisdom teeth, with more ease. And yet your team is still struggling to find their way around the dental software system, or your Practice Act laws have changed in your state, and you're afraid to allow them to go and take those expanded function courses so that they can help you. So I think, as far as being able to move forward, move beyond, we can't just rely on that one key person. We need to continuously work on developing the efficiency of everybody. They need to continue to get better and better, regardless whether they're processing, entering payments or verifying dental benefits. They need to be ninjas, masters at whatever it is that they do.
I want to ask you a question I've got like 3 times last month, and I thought this morning I'm gonna lay this question on you. Dental offices will bring in a hygiene consultant to improve their hygiene department, and they'll sit down and tell the dentist, we think you should do this. Why don't you talk to the hygienist? And they say, and I quote, I'm afraid of my hygienist. I don't want to confront her. She might get mad. I mean, it blows my mind that
Sure.
you would give an employee money and you're afraid of them. And I think successful people are the ones who are fine with having the most number of uncomfortable conversations.
Sure.
So we've got these dentists who they don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation with their hygienist or an employee. They want to come in and say, how was your weekend? How was your birthday? Did you have a barbecue? They don't want to sit there and say, hey, I read the average hygienist does this dollars of production per day, and you're 300 under that. And so what do you say to a dentist who is afraid of his hygienist and doesn't want to talk about, the uncomfortable data?
Okay. A couple of places to start. One would be I would try to take them into the future. I'd start with where they are now and try to take them into the future to say, well, Howard, let me ask you, how does it feel when you're coming in every day and you're being held hostage by this member of your team or this, well, it kind of makes me sick to my stomach. So, well, can you imagine it still being that way 4 or 5 years from now? It's like, oh, no, I don't even think I want to do this anymore. So why don't we look at a way to sit down with them and let's try to have them talk about what their goals are. Now, it could be, because I've seen it happen, it could be that they've had control of that practice for so long, that one or 2 team members, whether it's a hygienist or whomever it is, that they're at that point of no return. I mean, that does happen. But it's also possible to, when you sit down and say, instead of, hey, I want you to do this, hey, let's look at, we're kind of stuck. So have them give some buy-in. Where do you guys see that we could make these improvements? If we may not go from here to an additional $300 a day, but if we could increase that by $100 a day, and then involve them in that process. But you hit on something, and I said this yesterday to a new associate in the office. We were having a team meeting, and this team has grown, and they're getting ready to bring on 2 new people. And so I've had the owner doctor I said, okay, you guys have built this culture. You're creating phenomenal results when other offices around you think that those types of results aren't even possible. You guys are doing it. And so when you're bringing some new folks on board, what is it that you as a team and you as the owner doctor want them to know about what are some things that make owner doctor happy? It's like, well, when we're ready, when we're in the room and when we're ready, and then I said, well, what drives him crazy? So seeing us on our cell phone, so they were making a list. They're going to go over this with the new folks. And so I look at this associate dentist and I mentioned to her and I asked her, I said, what about you? What are some things? She was like, oh, I'm so new and they know more than I do. And I said, well, let me encourage you that the first time you see somebody doing something and you wish they would do something else, get started now giving them feedback. But what happens is we tend to wait till we've had it up to here, and then they take it personal. It is personal. So I agree. So give that feedback often, but going back to what's the difference, very often doctors will begin to give that feedback. I want you to change this. I want you to change that. And there's very little appreciation given to them. It's very little praise, a whole lot of negative feedback, and then it begins to stir up. The whole team resents them. Next thing you know, we've got the turnover going like crazy, which that not only costs us emotionally, it costs us financially when we have to continue to train new people. So it's a vicious cycle. But going back to your question, if you've got a team member that's controlling the office, I kind of pull a Dr. Phil. I'm like, how's that working for you? And what are you willing to do about it? And occasionally they'll say, well, I don't want to do anything big right now, but let's see if we can't bring them on board. And I'll be the first to admit, I've written a few people off, Howard, and then they've surprised me.
Right.
We've given them an opportunity to participate. And I thought, I'm here to tell you, she's probably not going to make it along this path. And all of a sudden now she got input. And she may give a little dialogue and feedback, but I've also learned that sometimes just because somebody complains a little bit, it doesn't mean that they won't do it. That's just their reaction. It's like, oh, I'm not really sure I like that.
I love the Japanese proverb, successful man fall down 7 times, get up 8. People are always getting back up, reinventing themselves. I did a run this morning with a guy, and he told me he hasn't drank for 7 weeks. And we're both shocked. I mean, we're both looking at each other like, God dang, that's awesome. And he says, I don't even want it. I don't think I'll ever do it again. And it wasn't that he was an alcoholic or this or that or this or that. It was just he just every night he wanted a couple beers and he just did that forever and shut off. I want to say one thing about the cell phone though. I believe that a lot of my success with the dental community is that I've always stood up to dentists. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything because I believe I believe in trust, and I'd rather hear a speaker tell me what he really thinks than have a speaker tell me what he thinks I want to hear. You know what I mean? And no flippies. And I hear so many dentists bitching about their staff taking a personal phone call, and I'll say, dude, how many times a day at work do you call your wife? 3. Okay, so now you're mad that your assistant checked in with her husband?
Sure.
So if you don't want your staff to make a personal phone call, why did you call your wife 3 times a day? I mean, is it child issues, work issues, whatever the hell? But it's got to be fair. And what I love the most about Hewlett-Packard is Hewlett and Packard, when they started HP, they had the same cubicle as every engineer in that place. And you go to so many of these firms, and the management's closed room, private, and all the people in the cubicle saying, I can't even hear myself talk on the phone. But when the CEO of HP was on the phone and he couldn't hear, and he says, keep it down. I mean, everybody realized these are the rules. So be the same. If you don't want your staff checking Facebook all day, you don't do it. They can't call your husband. You can't call your husband or wife or whatever the hell it may be. And then I want to ask you another question. I heard this morning. On another workout buddy said, dentist, and said, I need a new receptionist. My receptionist of 7 years is moving, and I need a new one. What are any pointers? How do you find a rocking hot receptionist? I mean, where would you go? I mean, do you just go to Craigslist? Do you, how would you address that? We know that who you surround yourself was your second point behind attitude. So if I'm looking for a new receptionist, the first line when the outside world calls my office, they ain't going to call the hygienist or the dentist or the assistant. They're going to call the receptionist. I believe the most important person in the office. How do you find a new one?
We actually work with offices to help them find them. So we have a process for that. I love to talk about this. We do place ads on Craigslist, Dental Post, those sorts of things. We also ask, if you have a patient or, even your team, who do you know that would be a good fit? Because again, we are looking for, especially that front line of administrators, they've got to be people person. Unless you're looking for someone that's going to be back off in a back room working on collections, they have no interface with anybody. We're looking for that personality. And when you mentioned Southwest Airlines, and it's been probably 15 years ago, I read an article in Reader's Digest that talked about their hiring process and that they started with group interviews, even with the pilots. And they'd get a group of folks in there. They wanted to see how they interacted with each other. And so that's what we recommend. We put the word out. We get the candidates that are referred in. We get candidates from Craigslist. We're looking at their work experience. We also make sure that they send at least 3 references, and we can't recommend enough actually calling those references. Most offices never, they'll look at the references. Oh, they worked here, they worked here. They don't ever call. And even though professionally we're not supposed to say a lot, when we give a reference, it's amazing what people say, or more importantly, sometimes what they don't say. So do your homework. And that group interview, it's a casting call. You got to think, let's say we were casting for a production. We get 5, 6 folks in the room. We're asking them questions, and we're not only looking to see, if I'm asking you questions, Howard, and there are 4 or 5 other people in the room, and I have an office manager or another doctor sitting there with me, one of us is looking at you while you're responding. The rest of the other one is looking to see what are the other people in the room doing while they're doing that. You want the ones that are nodding, or that when you ask them a question, they say, I love what Howard said earlier. You want to see how well do they play with others. And again, I want that dynamic personality. I want the person, we use DISC assessments. I want somebody that's a high influencer that also has great attention to detail. And I want that outgoing personality there as an administrator. So, I think regardless of the source, and it's funny because we'll track Craigslist, Monster, Dental Post. I haven't found the quality of the candidate necessarily to be any better from one to another, although with Craigslist, you have to sift through more. Well, I work at the 7-Eleven, but I've always wanted to work in a dental office, or I have 0 work experience. So you're looking for mainly that high energy, outgoing personality that you can even feel their voice on the telephone, that they're warm and friendly.
I think it's so funny because when you're with dentists and you're at a bar or club or restaurant or whatever, they just always talk about sports and the draft and the players, and they'll get in these heated arguments about who the Cardinals are going to draft for a wide receiver or quarterback or whatever. And I'm always amazed. I'm like, these teams have full-time scouts that all they do is HR. And then when you needed a dental assistant, you put an ad on Craigslist, two people showed up, and you hired one of the 2. Could you imagine what would happen to the Arizona Cardinals if when they need a quarterback, they put an ad out and 2 guys show up from college ball and they pick one of the 2? I mean, all they do is pick the best players, and the dentist will get on Dental Town and they'll argue till 4 in the morning about what bonding agent to use.
Right.
And then they treat their HR picks as like, whatever. We got a Amy, we got a Susan. Would you rather be yelling Amy or Susan all day? It's just. And then I want to say another thing. We do the group interview too. It's amazing how we both have come to this conclusion. And what I'm looking for, and I almost hate to say this on a podcast because I don't want to.
That just makes it that much more interesting.
Yeah, is we have learned through trial and error that the people who come in and just talk about everything they've done have been a disaster, even though they might be a dentist, an MBA, whatever this shit. And the ones that come in and they'll say, well, I'm in the marketing department. What is your background in marketing? And they'll tell their background in marketing, and they'll say, well, if I started working here and you're the marketing director, what is your biggest goal in marketing? Like what are you trying to achieve? And then the marketing person will say, well, we're trying to do this or this or that. And then they'll start engaging and talking about And we sense it's because, number one, it's not all about them. It's more of a team.
Sure.
But we think the best people can find a job anywhere. And they're trying to find, and they're asking us questions because they're actually thinking, I'm good. I can play on any NFL team. I could be a quarterback on any NFL team. I want to know if I worked here, like, what would I be working on? And they're asking us, like, what are we into? What are our problems? And then they start getting excited, like, hell yeah, that would be fun. I could so do that. And we say, wow, they're interested in the team members. We bring in the department managers, the head hygienist, the head assistant, the head receptionist, the office manager, and when they're like, what systems need work on, or what system's not working, they'll say, okay, well, recall. Well, I've seen the recall system like that. How are you guys doing it? Well, I've seen this. What do you think of that? And they're already. It's like
They're interacting.
they're
engaging.
working. That's our gut feeling. Did they come in and work during the interview? I didn't pay you. You showed up for an interview and we just worked because we went to lunch with you and it was a working lunch and we engaged and had ideas and we solved problems and I never even gave you $1. Imagine what it'd be like if I hired you and actually gave you $1. That's my deal. Another thing, these podcasts are listening to on every single country that Apple measures. Everyone, I'm sure, knows what Craigslist is, but you've said Dental Post twice. Explain what Dental Post is. And is that a regional play, a national play, an international
I
play?
believe they're national. There's dentalpost.net, and then there's also ihiredental.com, and there may be some others out there. Those are the two that are dental specific that I'm most familiar with. And typically, if we're looking for an assistant or a hygienist or a dentist, those would be the ones that we would use.
Dentalpost.net. I wonder why they didn't go dentalpost.com. I wonder why
it's taken.
Huh. Do you think it wouldn't be taken out? And then the other one's ihiredental.com.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you said that because I've been going to, I just got out of jail.com and not quite having the luck. But so you think both of those are plays for the whole USA?
I believe they are.
And how does it work? Does it cost money to post an ad? Or
yeah, it does. It costs, you pay a fee. There's different levels. In other words, do you just want to post the resume? Or if you pay more money, you can actually search their database of resumes. So it's always fun when we're searching the resume database for a client and we find one of their employees' resume in the database. That's usually pretty exciting because
that is. And is this for hygienist, receptionist? Does it include dentist?
Yes,
there's general dentists
out there as well. There aren't as many dentists out there as there are team members, but we're starting to see dentists looking out there, placing their resumes.
And do you know where these two companies are headquartered, or do you know the owners or anything like that?
I do not know the owners. I know iHire Dental is a division of iHire.com, which is sort of like a monster, .com. They added a dental division.
Right on. I'll look into that more. I've heard of dentalpost.net, but I don't know much about it. I also wanted. I get this question a lot. So sorry, I keep throwing questions at you. I just want to.
Okay.
I get this question a lot. Howard, how do you really think a morning huddle is worth it? How long should it be, and what do you cover in a morning huddle? Can you address that? Those are three very common questions.
Absolutely.
Are successful dentists more likely to have a morning huddle or not?
Yes, they are. I've yet to go into a practice that I would say is operating on all cylinders that isn't having a huddle. And I'll take it back to, back in the day, I was quite the jock. I played lots of sports, and I try to imagine going into a game without having a huddle before the game about who's starting today. These are the plays that, let's just a reminder, these are the plays that we're going to run. If they do this, we're going to do that. And then again, you have a huddle at halftime, right? So that's sort of the context for it. But if you're going to have a huddle, it needs to be a tight timeline. In other words, it doesn't need to be more than 10, max 15 minutes. This is not a staff meeting. This is not a time to talk about training. And it's also more than just reviewing, okay, well, we've got Sue Smith at 8 and Joe Jones at 9. I mean, everybody can read. This is how can we make the most out of the day? And so I would also say if we want to be efficient, I recommend that my clients have a checklist, and 80% of that checklist is the same. It may vary based upon different procedures that they do, but one of the things that we're looking at is what are our high production opportunities, not only today, tomorrow, and the next day. I'm a big believer, if you want every day to work out to be your ideal day, you've got to plan for that. So yes, everyone on the team has access to the computer and can look, but hey, the assistants are looking at their column or their doctor's columns. They're not looking at the other doctor's columns. They're not really looking at hygiene. So we're looking for what are those next available blocks of time that we need to sell. Just like if you're in the Gap and somebody's shopping for khakis, they may not even think about a shirt, but that patient sitting in the chair is in. They have something that needs to be done. If we can convert that for the same day, if we have time, that's great. But what we typically miss is being able to suggest, well, Howard, I think doctor may have a 10 o'clock available tomorrow. Would that work for you? All right, well, maybe you weren't even thinking that you wanted to come back tomorrow at 10, but your brain has to say, could I come tomorrow at 10 or no, I can't. So it makes the ability to fill those up and coming same day, next to business day times so much easier. And when it happens in the back, it's magic. Once that patient gets up and heads to the front, when their rear end gets up out of that chair and they're heading to the front, they have a couple of thoughts. One is, I need to use the restroom. Two is, how soon can I get out of here? And three, I'm getting ready to have to pay money. I mean, they're not really thinking about scheduling. They're ready to go. So we want to be intentional about letting the team know what's available on the schedule. One of the other things that's really valuable in that morning huddle, and I want to tie this into one of the keys for growing the practice, is on the case acceptance. The new patients that are coming in. In a dream world, if I was a dentist, I'd have an intraoral camera in every room. You should
I
never
do.
wonder. There you go. You shouldn't have to wonder, where is it? The minute you have to think, where is it? Do I need to go get it? It's there. So we use it on every patient. If we don't have one in every room and we have to think about who is it that we must use it on, who is on here that we've been telling them for a couple of visits, you got to get that tooth taken care of. It's cracked. So let's be ready. Pull up the old picture. Let's take a new picture. Let's show them how that's changed. From a marketing standpoint, we all know we should ask for referrals, but unless we make a point to do it, create some sort of way that it almost jumps up in our face so that we don't forget to do it, most practices, they don't ask. They know they should, but they forget. So we look at who are the patients that we know we want to give a referral card to. And I'm a big believer in route slips. If you want to talk more about that in a minute, we can. I know it's paper, but it's some of the most valuable paper that you will ever print in your office. Paper clip a referral card to those route slips. And then that way the team knows if that card's still on that, no one has told that patient how much they appreciate them and that they would love to see their friends and family. So we're being intentional about doing that as well. The other would be, looking at where are the trouble spots in the schedule. We do have control. Just because something is set that way, if we see it looks like the apocalypse may happen at 2 o'clock if we don't do something about what's going on in the schedule, that's the time to be proactive and look to say, hey, could we call Mary to see if she could come 30 minutes later? So it's a tight timeline meeting where my opinion is you can find several $1,000s worth of production opportunities, and to not have it, I think it costs you big time. So I'm a huge believer in the huddle.
So do you, I go into a lot of offices and they'll leave at the end of the day and the dentist is stressed out and he's going out to his car and he's wheeling out the nitrous tank and he just wrote him a script for Vicodin and he's getting ready to hit the drive-thru at the Walgreens, and I'll say, my God, what happened? And he's like, our break-even point was 5,000 today, and we only did 4,000. And I worked hard all day and lost $1,000. Why did I even get out of it? And then you go to the staff. How was your day? Great. Why was it great? Oh, Mary did so well, and we did the filling on the 3-year-old, and she didn't cry and all this. I'm a big believer in going over in the morning huddle the break-even point. I mean, I mean, so many offices don't even know what they have to do to break even, let alone make a dollar. And I wanted to ask you, do you recommend, and my dad called it, he used to call it the BAM number, bare ass
Yes.
minimum.
Yes.
And then MBA school, basically all MBA school did was gave me non-profane words for every word my father taught me in his restaurant. That's all it did. It just took me from rated R to rated GG. So do
Right.
you recommend going over the break-even point? And then I want to know what crosses the line of abuse. Like if the only way we're going to hit the break-even, say this dental office has to do $5,000 to break even, and the 11 o'clock canceled. And then we have a toothache that walks in at noon, and that's a lunch hour, 12 to 1. Or the other way, the 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock canceled, and then we got an emergency, but you close at 5, and she gets here at 4:45, and she broke a tooth. And if we stay an hour over and do the $1,000 cram, we hit our BAM number. And if we don't, we lose $1,000. Then you're looking at me with these puppy dog eyes, saying, "Well, we get off at 5, and I got to pick up my kid, and I got to go to pick up, I got to do my life." So talk about that.
Okay. First, yes, I'm a big believer, and I call it the break-even number. And in the morning huddle, most of my teams have like a whiteboard. I'll call it a focus board, and it's written up there. Just a reminder. Here's the break-even. Here's how much goes for operative. Here's how much for hygiene. Here's where we are. Here's where we're falling short. And again, here are where the openings are in the appointments. And then most of our teams, we have agreements or a code of conduct that says if we need to work through lunch or stay late. I'm also a big believer in the radios. Hey, we've got an opportunity here at noon. Who would be willing to run out and go get lunch? Who would be willing to stay? And I could be about to quote you. This is not something I said, but I'm repeating something I heard a client say. Because we talked about lunch, and he said, if I don't get lunch, that's okay. I've never had a $700 sandwich. So,
That's a good one.
so the team knows that they will get a lunch, and they will work together. Again, if they're cross-trained, they will work together to say, and there may be one that says, I can't do it today. I've got to run to the bank, or I told my husband I would go pick this up. But there's usually someone that can, and they get, because I strongly recommend a bonus system in place that's based upon the productivity, ultimately the collection. So they're vested. They want to hit those numbers. And then as far as at the end of the day, the office I was in yesterday, their vision statement is it's all about the patient. Short, simple, says it all. It's all about the patient. And agreed, they can't all stay late every day. Or what tends to happen, I mean, my background was the administrative department. Usually if the doctor stays, there's at least one person administratively staying, right? Because we've got to get everything all tied up, neat in a bow before we leave, or we can't sleep at night, right? If we don't close out the day. So again, little short huddle, radios, Howard is here. It's 4:30. He's got a broken tooth. He'd like to go ahead and get that taken care of today. I know we normally leave at 4:30 or 4:45. Who can be available to stay? And in many of my offices, they have a rotation. They already know coming in that if there's a potential patient that needs to stay late. Well, today's Penny's day. Tomorrow's Susie's day. The next day's Joyce's day. So they plan for that as much as they can. But again, it starts with the team having the buy-in and understanding that it's not just the doctor that isn't, winning if we don't hit the goal, that it's the team as well. So they're usually pretty good as long as it's not every day at lunch, every single patient. And then most days, if we're scheduling, putting those pre-blocks in to be sure that we've got an ample number of the higher production procedures, every day it isn't, oh man, we've got to do this right now or we're not going to hit our target.
Okay, you've mentioned radios twice, and I'm estimating that probably 2,000 of the 5,000, 7,000 listeners don't even know what you mean.
Okay.
And we talk about radios. What is a radio?
All right. It's a walkie-talkie radio with a little earpiece or a headset.
Name brand.
Motorola.
That's what we use.
And Kenwood are the best ones that I've seen. And if you're familiar, if you don't want to order them from a dental company, if you go to the great thing about Amazon.com, BestBuy.com now is the customer ratings. You can go and look at the radios, see which ones have the best ratings. But everyone on the team, ideally, would have this radio on. So you've got, and actually, this really hit me one day when I was in the Old Navy retail store, and I said, "Do you have this pair of jeans in a long?" Right, because I run around with my pants too short most of the time if I don't have a long. So I was waiting for them to go to the back and look, and they said, "Let me check." And they hit a button, and they said, "Do we have this in a long?" "Yes, we do." "They'll be right up with it." And I thought, well, wouldn't that be a shame if Old Navy is more efficient with someone with very little training than our dental office is? Or I can remember the days when the first office I worked in, it made a square if you went around the office. I would literally walk around a couple of times and happen to miss whoever it was I was looking for. And I spent half of my life leaving the front, going to relay a message to someone in the back. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. I'm a big believer in using that so that you can have that instant communication with the rest of the team. One little story that I want to tell you to help define that, if I'm sure we have folks watching and listening that are thinking, "Oh, I've heard about that before, I'll never use a radio." I was having this conversation with a long-term client of mine a couple of years ago, and finally he said on the call, he said, "Look, Penny, I love you, and we're not getting radios. So if it's okay, let's just not bring that up, and will you make better use out of our time?" I'm like, "Okay, I won't bring it up anymore." So about 18 months later, he wound up in a unique personal situation, which had him working at his office 4 days a week and temping in other offices on that Friday. His first Friday in another office, he had never set foot in this office before, small town in the South. He walked in, they put a radio on him, and I'm just going to say his name was Dr. Ferran. And they said, "Okay, Dr. Ferran, we need you in room 1." He said they told him all day long where he needed to go next, and he had a $7,000 day in an office that he had never set foot in. So he called me driving back that night, and he said, "Hey, I just wanted to call you and tell you that you were right. And when I get home tonight, I'm ordering radios for my office." I mean, it was like all of a sudden the light bulb went off for him. We think we're efficient, but every time a member of your team has to get up and go look for someone or get up and go relay a verbal message to somebody, it's costing you productivity time.
Now you're over in Memphis, Tennessee, right?
I am.
Are you in Memphis? It says Collierville.
Collierville is a suburb of Memphis. Yeah,
By the way, I think didn't BB King just pass away?
He did.
How long ago was that?
It was about, I think, maybe 4 weeks ago.
I just want to say that I've been to 50 countries, and I think the 3 hottest music towns in the world is Bourbon Street in New Orleans, Bill Street in Memphis, and I don't know the name of that street in Nashville, but it's the same thing. It's about like 6 blocks of bars. Do you know what that street's called?
Is it 2nd Street?
Is it 2nd Street?
Maybe.
And I actually was lucky enough. I saw BB King on Bill Street. Did you ever see that?
I saw BB King in Albuquerque. I've been to BB King's on Bill Street, but I never actually saw him.
This was way back in there. I think it was like 1990. But I want to say, I want to make a couple comments. The reason I asked where you're from is because when you said radio, it struck me so funny, and I'm like, what? I think of a radio as like an AM FM radio in your car, and I always out here in Phoenix, what it was called walkie-talkies.
Walkie-talkie. Mm-hmm.
Walkie-talkie, but you call them radios, and it is a radio wave, I guess. But I don't think I've ever thought of a walkie-talkie as a radio, but it is a radio. So that's the regional play. I just want to say that I think the 2 things I agree with so much is that we do the walkie-talkies because you go into any office and I just walk to the desk and ask for my buddy. Hey, when's Tom going to lunch? Well, hang on just a second. And they'll get up and they'll walk away. It's like, really? You had to get up and walk away? You realize when I first took my 4 boys to Disneyland, you always saw employees at Disneyland running because they're like lost kid running. Now they're all on radio. And oh, yeah, we got a lost kid. He's, redhead, this, that, whatever. The second thing is I went paperless in 1999 just because that was the only way I could get the staff to pull the chart 100% of the time when the phone rang. Because the reality was when the phone rang, I'm talking to Penny and all this stuff, I'm not going to get up and go spend 5 minutes trying to find her damn chart. And then when the patient comes in, you didn't record any of that conversation. And I said, you know what? The only way I can get my front desk to pull a chart every single time is to get rid of all the charts.
Mm-hmm.
And now, when you call, I just type in Penny Reed, and boom, I pulled the chart instantly. So I think communication is everything. I mean, if your number one cost is labor, you should be
Right.
investing all your money. I mean, if you're spending 25% on average for your staff and paying 35% on average for the dentist, that means just like the S&P 500, they spend 55% on people. And if you're going to spend 55% on people, you need to spend all your money on making those people go faster, easier, higher in quality, lower in cost. Get this train going from 1 mile an hour, 2 miles an hour. I also want to say one thing on the you call it what do you call it, the break-even number?
The break-even point, the break-even number.
You called the break-even number. I never heard that term either. I need to spend more time in Memphis. Break-even number, but that sounds better than a break-even point. I like break-even number better. We'll call that Big Ben. Should you coin a term? Big
We
Ben.
we could call it Ben.
It's a talk in
Ben.
London, and I like Ben. I like Ben. That's cool. But a lot of dentists do a Christmas bonus, because they're born in a Christian country that's 82% Christian, and nothing you could do at Christmas would be motivating your employees the day we're filming this, which is July 9th. Nobody is changing their behavior on July 9th for a Christmas bonus on December 25th. I think those are insane. The monthly goal numbers is what the dentists that do track, they just go a monthly goal. But again, it's too little too late to know if you hit or miss a monthly number. And everybody says 1 day at a time, take 1 day at a time. If we're going to do what your goals are, this is the number we got to do today. And if you just focus on that number today, we just get her done. We just get her done today. And my team, and you're right on those walk talkies. Staff who have babies need to leave at 5. A lot of times they'll say, I'll give up lunch. And if you got 3 hygienists and 4 assistants, someone can give up lunch. And then the 27% of American baby boomers had no children. And in my office, those are the ones that most likely will stay late, including me, because my babies are all raised and gone. My boys are 20 to 28. So get the number done today. Let the day take care of itself. And then one more thing on that attitude, I still always find dentists, they say to me all the time, you can be biking with some dentist, say, you know what I hate? I hate these freaking emergencies. These people that just walk in, no appointment, and they haven't been in dentist 5 years. They don't fly. They talk like they're just bad people, and I love emergencies because
absolutely.
Yeah, and not just for the financial deal. I just think it's cool when someone comes in and they're swollen and they're in pain and they might be crying and they didn't sleep. And that's why I went to school for 8 years. I didn't go to school for 8 years to do cosmetic veneers on some pretty woman who's, after hair, she's getting her hair dyed and a boob job. I mean, I didn't study 8 years of college for that. I don't even get people. If you want to focus on that's great. I mean, I could never do that. I could never be a pediatric dentist. If I had to work on crying children, I'd just shoot myself right now. I mean, I would absolutely. I'd give up my dental license and my American citizenship if it meant I had to move to a foreign country to avoid being a pediatric dentist. I mean, I'm serious. I go in there, and when a little 3-year-old's crying, my heartbeat is like 145. I'm wishing I just wish I'd be anywhere than that. I just cannot deal with a 3-year-old screaming kid. And I just love the emergencies. I mean, I just love those, and I think it's so important. And what we have found in our office with Motorola walkie-talkies, that you're on the phone and someone's canceling their appointment, and then you can immediately push to talk and say, Howard's 10 o'clock in room 8 just canceled. And the girl sitting next to her is dealing with an emergency, and then the 3 hygienists all immediately look at their patient's treatment plan and says, well, Penny, you need 2 fillings done, and Dr. Fran has an opening in 10 minutes at the end of this appointment. You're here from 9 to 10, and his 10 o'clock just canceled, so from 10 to 11, he's free right now. I could finish cleaning you, move you to room 8, and do it right now. So I got 3 hygienists working existing treatment plans. I got every receptionist who's ever they're having a conversation with just got prompted. The 10 o'clock just opened for an hour in room 8. I got 3 assistants. The dentists, they always we'll have you come in and we'll do a filling on your right side. And then they'll bring you back for a filling on your left side. Yet oral surgeons work on all four quadrants all day long, every day. And you should just ask the patient. You just say, Penny, I know if I numb up both sides and you got pulled over for a speeding ticket, they're going to give you a DUI. But do you just want to stay? I mean, we did the right side. The 10 o'clock just opened up. We could just numb the left and keep going and be done. And you know what's really weird about CAD CAM? Penny, I can't believe I was saying this, but I love CIRAC, and I loved it, and our staff loved it, and we got trained on it, and it's been awesome. But I'm realizing that the other side of it is patient experience. We keep saying same day crowns, but the reality is that's a 2-hour appointment.
Right.
And so now I've been asking. By the way, so Penny, here's what we can do. You can we'll numb up this tooth, we'll prepare it, and I can scan it and mill it and make it right here today, and you'll be here 2 hours. Or I can take a rubber impression, leave the temporary in 1 hour, then you have to come back in 2 weeks, and I'll cement it on. So it can be an hour today, come back in 2 weeks for 30 minutes, or 2 hours a day. Do you realize 2 out of 3 people want to come back? And I first got that key in my head because I couldn't imagine sitting in a doctor's office for 2 hours.
Right.
I'd go insane. And then also imagines on what's their day look like.
Sure.
You know, what's their day? And Penny might sit there and say, hey, you know, my daughter stacked her car last night, and I really need to go to the State Farm agent, and I really need to get, I almost didn't come here today. I so much want to leave in an hour and come back in 2 weeks. So we have it, we offer it, but we're actually, a year ago, we were probably, for single unit crowns, we're probably all made in office except for gold. Or highly aesthetic, you know,
Right.
and anterior, and now, shoot, we're 2/3 back to labs now. We're because you got to be patient focused. You got to be patient focused. You can't be dentist focused. I mean, when a dentist tells me he's patient focused, it's always followed like, and my hours are Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. Wow. Wow.
With an hour for lunch, and we don't answer the phone during lunch.
And we take the lunch when everyone else does, when they could be at work taking a break and on their call. Hey, I want to ask you about why did you write this book?
I wrote it because, you know, which I know you've done a lot of speaking, you've done some consulting. I love your take on why you don't enjoy the consulting, right? Because at times it's frustrating, just like you guys get frustrated with patients that aren't compliant. I saw in my consulting business a mirror of what was happening in the dental industry. When I first began doing consulting 22 years ago, Howard, I could come into your office, have you raise your fees 5%, maybe 10, have you make a couple of tweaks on your schedule, have you start focused on asking for referrals, and like that, you'd be up 35%. I mean, literally, there were times when I thought maybe I had some sort of magical talent, right? But really, it was a no-brainer. Well, that began to not be as effective as the insurance companies came into play and corporate dentistry came into play, and dentistry got to be a little bit more competitive. So it wasn't that what I was sharing with them and teaching didn't work, but they were doing the same things that they've been taught, and they weren't getting the same results. You know, I noticed that case acceptance had gone down a little bit, that we had to see more new patients and more recall patients in order to get the same amount of operative. And so if you think about the Serenity Prayer, right, you know, like the grant me the courage to, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, I came up with the dentist Serenity Prayer, right, because I kept having these clients that were frustrated and bitter that had been in practice for, I'm sure you've talked with people like that, right? They've been in practice at least 15 years, and they want it to be the way that it was, right? Well, mama ain't coming, and you and I both know that that's not going to happen, right? So, you know, the focus on grant me the serenity to accept the aspects of the current dental economy, you know, the courage to proactively make the changes I can to grow my practice, and the wisdom to be able to coach my team. And so I thought, okay, what can we affect? And what is a handbook, so to speak? What does a dentist need to know if they're like, okay, let's just kind of start over mentally. What do I need to do to be able to grow my dental business? And so it's everything in there from, you know, you with your MBA starts out knowing your numbers, You can't just occasionally look at your numbers and effectively manage your business and be as profitable as you need to be. And then the rest of the focus is distilling down to some, key points, 5 areas, 5 keys to growing your dental business, so that we can sort of take a look. All right, where are we now? And if we will increase these different areas by only 10%, we can grow, depending on the size of the practice, we can grow the practice 28%, might mean another $300,000 in revenue, but we've gotten sort of stagnant, right? Because we're doing the things that we were taught to do in the 80s and 90s, go to the cosmetic courses, target the high-end patient, try to stay out of the PPOs. And I can remember putting my hands on my hips in my mid-20s and being in the front of a room and telling dentists never, ever, ever participate with a PPO. Well, nobody was on PPOs back then. So I've had way too many clients come to me and say, you know what? Even my best friends at church have left my practice because they want to go somewhere in network. So I'm not saying that you have to participate with them, but they're here. And if you do participate with them, you're discounting your fee. So how are you going to make up for that dollar difference? It's got to be in efficiencies and increasing your hygiene membership. Patients, their insurance reimbursement is not what it was. So we have to help the patients find their want to. I mean, let's face it, patients don't buy what they need. They really don't. They buy what they want. So if we focus on, as you were saying, the physics of it, let's look at this x-ray, do you see this fracture? What does it mean to them? So, helping them increase their want to, increasing the total number of active patients. If practices are not monitoring how many of their patients are active, and by an active patient, my definition is last 24 months, if the practice begins to shrink, they don't really notice it until it begins to hit their net. That's a figure that needs to be tracked at least once a quarter. I have my clients track it monthly. It's easier than trying to remember to do it 4 times a year. And one other key point about the frustration about the emergency patients, it dawned on me, a patient can't buy dentistry from you until they come into your store being your practice. They can't buy it over the telephone. They can't buy it on your website. We've got to become awesome on the phone. When they call in, my assumption is if you call and you're not a patient in our office, it doesn't matter what questions you ask me. That question behind the question is this the practice that I want to be my dental office? So we've really got to be aware and focused and, primarily get the team to understand these 5 areas to really be able to grow the practice, because it's not going to get less competitive. It will get more competitive. And we've got to be ahead of the curve instead of waiting and saying, ooh, we're flat again, or our practice is starting to shrink. What do we do? Well, then you're digging yourself out of a hole. So I want to create more of an awareness of what are the, yes, there are things we can't change, but I don't want to waste my days and hours worrying about that. I want to focus on what are some things that we can do right now that will help us grow from where we are.
And can they order the book now at pennyreed.com?
They can get it at pennyreed.com. They can get it at amazon.com. It's in print there. And Kindle, it's on iBooks and Nook, Barnes & Noble.
And how much is it?
The hard copy is $20, and I believe the digital version is $9.95.
The digital is digital to read or audio?
Yeah. No, there is not an audio yet. So the Kindle, iBook, Nook, those are $9.95.
But you know what I have figured out? I have figured out that guys like me, I'm a book reader. I mean, if I pan this camera over, I got 1,000 books. But most monkeys don't want to sit in a chair and read. They like to multitask. And the reason these podcasts have exploded is because 85% of them are doing audio only. Only 15% are watching us right now on YouTube or Dental Town or video. And so they like to listen to that while they're cleaning their car, doing their dishes, doing their laundry, on the treadmill, whatever. And Dental Town is launching our first audiobook. And so I got to go into a sound studio and read my new book. And my God, I couldn't be more honored than to debut our audiobook with you. I want you to think about that. You think you might be interested in that?
I would love that.
I would love it more. And number 2, there's different markets. Some people are video, and we've put up 317 online CE courses, and they've been viewed over 500,000 times. And one of the biggest feedbacks on it is they're perfect for stabbing. Because if I tell my dentist anything, I'm Fred Flintstone, they're not going to listen to me. But you're an expert because you're 100 miles away from home. And I wish you would do a title of your book, um, growing your dental business, and make it a online CE course. The dentist could buy the book for each team member and say, okay, we're going to read this as homework. Then we're going to watch you. And that'd be the perfect setup to say, well, we've read her book. We watched her together as a team. And then if that doctor calls you up, what is on your menu? I mean, do you come in? Do you only consult over phone long distance? I mean, what is your in-office consulting?
As far as everything that's available, I do. Sometimes practices don't know where to start. We might start on the phone. The best way to start, which is what most clients will do, is have me come in and spend a day while they are in operation, so that I can get more of a feel for what's happening. Honestly, I know more if they tell me their numbers than they think I do without the observation, but it gives the team a chance to meet me, shows them that I'm interested in their practice. Then we follow up if it's, an out of town, more than 100 miles away, 200 miles away, the next day with a training session. And then when I speak to the principals about how to grow their practice and things to work on, I've got a relevant example of something that I saw the prior day. So I'm not just talking in theory. So there are offices that may just do a couple of phone calls, or they may have me come in once. Or I have a lot of clients that we'll work together for 12 months, and I will come in a couple of times over the course of that time, and then we'll have some follow-up calls, online, like a join.me, go-to-meeting type sessions in between, because part of it's knowing what to do, but being sure that it's implemented. If you learn what to do, you get excited. If there's not some accountability there and some steps to get it implemented, most of the time offices don't get a lot out of consulting. So
Well, my view on consultants is that every single person I know that's doing 1, 2, or 3 million a year, taking home 3, 4, 500,000, they're a big fan of consultants, because if I give you $1 and at the end of the year my practice spends off two more, you just double my money. And that and the very best offices I know, they're always doing consultants, and because they always pay for themselves if you have a good one. And I believe that I believe the consultants, the successful ones, are counterintuitive. They tell you everything they're going to do. It like you wrote a book. There's no secrets, because the consultants who don't want to say anything, because then they'll say, well, I'm not going to say anything because then you're not going to hire me. Well, then no one's going to order you because they don't know if you're a
Well, they don't know your message. They don't
yeah,
know your message. And,
yeah.
and I actually, my sister now works with me. She's one of my executive assistants, my big sister. And when she proofread the book, she called me. She said, Penny, this is really good, but you're giving away all your secrets. And I said, you know what? It's okay. Because when I kept it all a secret, nobody really knew. Maybe they'd heard of me, but they're like, what do you do? I want them to understand the philosophy, and there will be some that will read it and will never work with me. But they'll get the information, they'll grow their practice. But you're right. It's like, okay, here's what it would be like. Here's what we've learned.
The successful dentists are they're not impressed with a magic bullet or a secret, or she's going to come in with a silver bullet and fix me. They're only interested in, I want to give you money and you get her done. You come in here, it's implementation. And if I want to order Greek food or Italian food or Mexican food, I need to know that first, because I don't want someone coming in saying, drop all your insurance, be a cosmetic dentist, be a boutique practice, unless that's what you want to be. So you have to look at the message and say, yeah, I totally agree with this chick. She's totally this. I'm never going to get my hygienists and assistants and on board. So I'm giving you money to come in and get them on board. We are completely out of time. Hell, we're 4 minutes overtime. So the dentist, two things. The dentist driving there saying, well, Penny, how much does something like this cost? How much does it cost to hire you as a consultant? Or how does that work?
Yeah, the telephone consulting starts as less than $1,000 for several sessions. The in-office consulting as low as $3,500 a day, and then as far as the annual packages, and we'll usually prorate that can start at $1,500 a month. So one thing that I work with doctors on is we'll have an initial conversation. So, I'll talk to you. We'll do that initial consultation just like if they came to your office.
Can one of my listeners, how come my listener, do they email you? Do they call you? What if someone wants to talk to you?
They can send an email
At
Penny, Penny, at pennyreed.com.
okay, Penny, like the penny at pennyreed.com. Are they allowed to call you?
They are allowed to call.
What's that number?
It's the toll free is one.
No, don't give them a toll free. Don't give them a toll free. If they're that damn cheap, don't even take the call. Dennis email me every day. I'm trying to call you, but I can't find your toll free number. It's like, what? It's like I'm supposed to talk to you for free and pay for the call. It's like I already don't like you.
Okay, 901-371-6295.
Say it one more time.
901-371-6295.
And I want you to cancel that toll-free number today, lower your overhead, and get rid of all the completely insane. What's that?
It's on everything.
Oh, my God. The dentists who look for the toll-free number, they're always the most irrational, illogical, insane, and you can just screen that basket. And I do hope that you do our debut audiobook. I think we're going to have the Dentaltown app is why these podcasts exploded, where we just passed 35,000 downloads. That's awesome. And having the first audiobook be you would be magical. And I'm just going to end the dentist in this. You know the problems. You've had them for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and it's not getting done. And I'm telling you that people who are the most successful offices know, well, if I pay a consultant 10, 20, 30,000, and next year my pre-tax, my taxable income to the IRS is up 50, 60, 70, hello? And bottom, it's like, why do I have a personal trainer show up at my house every morning at 5 o'clock? Because if she doesn't show up, it's 100% chance I'll roll over and go back to bed. It's right? Not even a 99% chance. It's not even a 98%. It's a given. And when I turned 50 years old, I was like, okay, I didn't work out the first half century. Probably not going to work out the second half century. So I'm buying accountability. I'm buying implementation. And I got 2 Ironman athletes that live a mile away from me, 2 different women. They alternate days. They're both same age. So they know how 50-year-old body works. They show up every morning at 50 and take me out for an hour or 2. And every time their schedules to where they can't do it, it's not, it's more likely I'll be hit and killed by a meteorite than I'll be out. So damn it, Dennis, you're listening to stuff, you're stressed out, you're financially broke, you're pissed off. Call Penny. I've known this lady for probably 25 years. I was a big fan of your writings. We're back in the, you used to help me a lot in the 90s. And I'm a big fan of yours. Thank you so much for spending an hour with me.
Thank you, Howard.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.